My name is Haley Jones, and I am really excited to present week 2 of 6th grade social studies to you for KCS at Home Summer Edition. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I teach 6th grade at Vine Middle Magnet School. There's a picture right there of my school where I get to go to work every day, and a couple of pictures of my really sweet kids. So first of all, shout out to Vine students. I taught all of y'all, so I don't care what grade you're in. I love you, and we all really miss you, and I'm really excited to see you at the start of next school year. Now, before we get started with today's lesson, I need to remind you to use your superpowers, okay? You have 4 of them. Superpower number 1, turn on the closed captions. I think they're like right here. I don't know. It's like 2 C's, okay? If you turn those on, you are going to be able to read whatever I say at the bottom of your screen, okay? Number 2, adjust the speed so that instead of talking this quickly, you can slow me down, okay? It might help you understand what I'm saying a little bit better, and it's gonna give you time to process the information, okay? Option number 3, your third superpower. You can watch short little clips. You can take a break. You can think about what you learned. You can maybe even write down some notes, middle schoolers, and then even rewatch it if you just can't get enough. Okay, that's gonna help you retain this information. And superpower number 4, watch with somebody you love. Pick a younger sibling up that you really want to give a head start for 6th grade content. Get an older sibling you want to show off to. Okay, find a parent or an uncle or an aunt and watch this video with them. And be sure to take some time to talk about what you're learning to make sure you're really understanding it. Okay? Now, we're going to start our lesson. We are talking about 2 Caesars today, and neither one of them is a salad. Okay? In fact, what we are doing today is becoming familiar with Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar, okay, 2 great political leaders of ancient Rome. We are going to learn who they are, and hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand why they matter so much. All right, now why are we learning this? Well, first of all, Julius Caesar is a legend. Okay, can I just get like a record scratch? I'll say it again. Julius Caesar is a legend. Right? You probably have heard his name 100 times in your life just by being a person. Today, you're going to find out why you've been hearing it. But that's not all. Also, understanding how Rome's political system changed is going to help you understand how governments work on a larger scale. And hopefully, by talking to that loved one at home that you're watching this with, maybe, or by reflecting on what else we've learned in social studies, you're going to be learning something about human nature itself, okay? Something about what's inside of us that makes us people. But also, guys, you got to know how Rome went from being a republic to being an empire. It is kind of wild that this civilization used to have a government that was focused on the democratic ideals of Athens. And now suddenly we have a situation where it's a lot of different guys, just depending on who is kind of the strongest and perceived as being the best. They have total power at this place, right? We got to know how we went from being a republic where people had representation in government to an empire where a sole leader ruled a whole lot of land, okay? How will you know it? And my face is cutting out part of that, which is unfortunate, but you will know it when you can correctly identify Augustus Caesar and Julius Caesar, 2 different guys, okay, based on some identifiers that I give you, and also when you're able to demonstrate expertise on one of those 2 guys, okay? There's a poster option at the end where you're going to think about you're going to pick either Julius Caesar or Augustus Caesar, and you're going to think about what did he believe in? What is a quote from the article that really describes him? What did he care about? What did he value? So that you can really demonstrate that you have a deep understanding of one of them, okay? Or overachievers can do both, okay? So that's what we're doing today. What, why, and how. So let's get started. These are our guys, Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar. You can tell from their birth dates which one came first, right? Julius Caesar was born circa, that means close to, right, around, circles are round. Julius Caesar was born around 100 BC, right? And we remember that BC years are going to count down as time passes, okay? So Augustus Caesar is about 37 years younger than Julius Caesar, which makes sense because, spoiler alert, Augustus Caesar is Julius Caesar's grandnephew, okay? Julius Caesar is actually going to adopt Augustus Caesar, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We're just going to talk about Julius Caesar first, okay? Because chronologically, in time, Julius Caesar came first, right? So we're kind of getting a picture of where we are in time. Let's look at, oh, I forgot. I didn't want to tell you about this yet. Pay no mind to the murder scene in front of you. We'll get there. As we were. Like I was saying, now that we have an idea of where we are in time, let's look at where we are on the map, right? This is a world map, and if we were in my classroom, we would play that really fun geography game that we like to do, but we're just going to zoom in on this map, okay? So we're going to start by eliminating the Western Hemisphere. Don't need that. Not super sure where we are, but I know what the coast of China looks like, and I know the Indian subcontinent. We're going to eliminate those. Now it's kind of easy for me to see that we've got the whole continent of Africa here, and I know that today we only need up to Egypt, so we'll just narrow that down. This looks pretty good, guys. Moving in a little bit because I knew that we didn't need the Caspian Sea right there. You can identify the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. I know for today's lesson we don't need those. We can kind of pare that down, okay? And this is really the chunk of the world in context of the larger world map that we are going to be looking at today, okay? But obviously this image isn't very helpful to us. Let's blow it up. My timing was a little off. Right here, you can see the region that we're going to be talking about today, okay? We have the northern coast of Africa. You know, this is the Mediterranean Sea, okay? Asia Minor's right here. This is Greece, and we are working with Rome, okay? This is what the land looks like. I'm about to show you some geographic boundaries, and you can see how much of this land that Rome ruled after Julius Caesar's death, okay? Actually, I think we're going to be able to see before and after. Remember, guys, Rome is actually a little city right in here, okay? And then that city of Rome became the seat of a civilization that owned, whoa, look at this map, okay? Now, the red, oh no, the red on this map, okay, the kind of pink color, why am I pointing? The red is going to show you land that was owned by Rome, okay, or that was Roman territory. The green places are showing you lands just that Caesar conquered, okay, on his own. This is not going great, okay. So when you look at this map and you look at the pink, you're going to be thinking, okay, Roman territory, right? Even these areas with kind of the orange slices, for our purposes today, we're going to say that was land that Rome had a lot of influence in. Okay, that was Roman territory. The green right here, and also up here in this region, which is called Gaul, is going to be the areas that Julius Caesar conquered for Rome. Okay, so speaking of Caesar, let's get back to him. Julius Caesar is the first Caesar. Okay, he was born circa 100 BCE, and he was born a patrician. You remember from last week, a patrician is somebody of noble blood, right? Julius Caesar's father was a very illustrious, that means famous, right? General. Okay, he was a really important guy. And Julius Caesar grew up in a household of nobility, in a military household. His parents were called populares, okay? You can think of that as a political ideology, okay? Populares generally believed in distributing representation among all classes of people, okay? They weren't interested in other patricians having all of the say, okay? And when they were exercising their role in the Roman Republic, they were going to be advocating for those things, okay? The inverse of a populare is an optimate, Okay, and it's not really important that you know these things for 6th grade. I just think it's interesting, and it's going to help you understand some of the conflict that comes up for Caesar. Okay, so Caesar, he's a populare, he's a nobleman, living a good life. When he's 16, he experiences a tragedy. Okay, his father dies, right? Gone. Okay, Julius Caesar is now the head of his household. Okay, so he gets married. He becomes a priest in the temple of Jupiter. He is continuing to build his own social power, right? We know that priests having that high religious role is a very influential position to be in, right? So that's where Caesar is. Well, Caesar has a problem, and it's not just the murder scene that I showed you a few minutes ago, okay? Caesar's problem's name is Sulla, okay? Sulla was an optimate. That's a different kind of political ideology from populare, okay? You'll remember me saying that. Sulla believed in rule by force personally, all right? As an optimate, he believed in increasing the influence of patricians. He believed they honestly knew best for Roman society, and that was the way for Rome to go, okay? So he has a different political perspective from Caesar completely, and a different perspective from Caesar's well-known family. Also, if you look at that bust, right, that's what that kind of statue is called, you can tell that Sulla, the sculptor maybe thought he was a mean guy, okay? And that's probably because Sulla was pretty brutal with his political enemies, okay? Sulla was a dictator. That means he was a single person who took power in Rome, okay? Now, Sulla was different from other dictators. The Roman Republic actually did function by allowing an individual to step up as a dictator for a period of time. Okay, but Sulla was not like those guys. He's kind of a new breed. He comes in and he starts removing everybody who politically disagrees with him, right? And you remember who politically disagrees with him, that's our boy, right? So Julius Caesar is going to leave Rome for a period of years. He's eventually going to be able to return. His mom's noble family pulls some strings. They have some connections, and he is eventually able to come back. But when he does, this guy Sulla, his government administration, wipes him out financially. Okay, so Caesar is going to lose his entire wife's dowry, right? All of the money that she brought into his marriage, gone, right? So Caesar is suddenly jobless and broke, right? And what's he going to do? Well, he's going to try to go to work. Okay, and we remember Caesar's dad was a general. Caesar's going to go to work as a soldier, okay? And he's going to become a really good soldier. I guess it runs in his family. He's going to become such a good soldier that he ends up being elected. And this is like a shortened version of a much longer story, okay? But we'll cover the rest of it when you get to 7th grade next year, okay? Your teachers are going to fill you in. But what you need to know is that Caesar went from being born as a nobleman, okay, to really losing a lot and having a lot of hardship caused by that guy Sulla, right? Ooh. To having so much military success that he is elected as the military tribune, okay? And he becomes the leader of something called the First Triumvirate, okay? When you think triumvirate, think tricycle, okay, that's three guys in charge of all of Rome all together, okay? Caesar's going to be in charge of that, and he's going to do a lot of things for Rome that people really like conquer Egypt and make Cleopatra VII the queen. Now, side note, guys, a lot of people, when they picture Cleopatra, they might picture something like this, just a picture I found online. Here's an actual bust of Cleopatra VII, the Queen of Egypt. I don't know what you want to do with that. Imagination is a beautiful thing, but this is a real bust. Julius Caesar is going to make Cleopatra VII Queen of Egypt. He's going to conquer Egypt for Rome, right? We know that Egypt is right here, okay? And that's counted as a dependent state, which means it's a state that is being run by Rome at the time, okay? Julius Caesar did a lot to expand Roman territory. He also implemented a lot of Roman reforms, okay? And Roman reforms were those populare ideals, okay, that are going to benefit plebeians. And you remember plebeians are that lower social class, okay? The Roman reforms are going to skew heavily toward benefiting veterans, okay? And why would Julius Caesar want to help veterans? Well, he is one, right? He knows what it's like to be a soldier, and he worked his way from the ground up, right? So he's giving a lot of land to veterans. He's redistributing land among plebeians. He completely overhauled Rome's tax system, which was already unpopular, right? And he's doing these things that are generally perceived as really good innovations by the people in Rome. So Julius Caesar is in a pretty good position at this point, right? I mean, he has done all of that, right? Those really popular reforms. He's also done things for Rome that are just practical, like creating a calendar that is a lot like the calendar we use today. Hello, Julius, July, Augustus, August, right? He's starting a police force. He's making a lot of really popular innovations, but in order to do this, he is also making some political enemies, okay? By this point, Julius Caesar is no longer ruling as the military arm of the first triumvirate, right? Triumvirate, tricycle, 3 guys sharing power. Julius Caesar is down to being the only guy left, okay? And in fact, to make all of these great developments in Roman government, he started calling himself dictator for life. Okay, now again, a dictator alone isn't something that was completely foreign or strange to the Romans, but the idea of a dictator for life, a guy who was going to rule until he died, was a problem for a lot of Romans, okay? Especially the Roman Senate, who at this point are feeling like Julius Caesar is just walking all over them to do whatever he wants, okay? And for them, regardless of how popular the things that he's bringing about are, he's still stepping on their power. And so they decide to do something to take it back. And on March 15th of 34 BC, this is called the Ides of March. This is what they do to Julius Caesar, you guys. They stab him to death. All of these senators in Rome get together with daggers under their cloaks. And when Julius Caesar comes into the basilica, boom, they're stabbing him, okay? Hence the 34 BCE death date, RIP Julie. So, oof, yikes. So he's murdered, right? The Senate murders him because they were threatened by his power, okay? But Julius Caesar left this lasting legacy, okay? He left a lasting legacy of, number one, kind of being somebody who was a single ruler of Rome, but also was very popular with the people. Okay, that's a big one. He left a lot of social reforms in his wake. Okay, a lot of those popular ideals he was able to propagate on behalf of the plebeians. He left Rome in pretty good shape for his successor, whoever that would be. And one of the most major contributions for our sake today is he left an heir of sorts, okay? He adopted his great nephew. Let's stop looking at that, right? It's so sad. He adopted this guy, okay? His great nephew, Augustus Caesar, okay? And Augustus Caesar is going to eventually become Rome's first emperor, okay? But before all of that, before he was even called Augustus Caesar, by the way, he was called Octavian. Now, I remember that his name was Octavian. I remember that Octavian and Augustus Caesar are the same because how many sides does an octagon have? 8. How many letters in Augustus? 8. Octagon, Octavian, Augustus Caesar. There we go, right? It's important that you know both names only because later in your life, you might see mention of Octavian as the first emperor of Rome, and it's going to be confusing if you don't know that they're both, right? When you look at your reading, you'll see I compared it to Cardi B. I think it's helpful. So, Octavian, Augustus Caesar. He is Julius Caesar's grandnephew. Julius Caesar adopted him in as his son, and after Julius Caesar's death, how you think he's going to feel? If you said mad, you are right, okay? So Augustus Caesar is going to take power after Julius Caesar's death, along with 2 other guys. And you remember what it's called when 3 guys share power in ancient Rome? It's that triumvirate, okay? So Augustus Caesar is going to rule with this guy, Marc Antony, and another one of Julius Caesar's sympathizers that we don't actually really care about today. So the 3 of them are going to rule together until that third guy that we don't care about has a conflict with Augustus Caesar. they have some challenges. By challenges, I mean battles. And Augustus Caesar prevails. He wins. And now the second triumvirate has been dissolved. And it's only those two guys, right? Because a tricycle missing a wheel is no longer a tricycle. So the first triumvirate involved Julius Caesar. That dissolved. The second triumvirate involved Marc Antony and Augustus Caesar, his heir. That dissolved pretty quickly. Okay? Now we have Marc Antony and Augustus Caesar sharing a lot of influence in Rome, both low-key, probably wanting to be the number one guy. And let me tell you how that came crashing down. Well, you guys remember this girl, right? Cleopatra VII, Queen of Rome. Well, she and Marc Antony are going to fall in love, which is a problem for Augustus Caesar because he had but he had given his sister to marry Marc Antony. And Marc Antony had been married to Augustus Caesar's sister until he fell in love with Cleopatra and divorced Augustus Caesar's wife to marry her. So Augustus Caesar is going to be pretty mad about that, right? He's also going to be concerned from a political perspective about Marc Antony having this really powerful tie to Egypt, which was an important part of the Roman Empire, because now there's an alliance there where it would be pretty easy for them to conquer Augustus Caesar and threaten everything that he'd worked so hard for, right? So Marc Antony and Augustus Caesar are going to fight each other. So this is like Rome on Rome violence in here, okay? They're going to have a battle down here in the Ionian Sea. Okay, it's going to be called the Battle of Actium. And you probably already know who wins because we're talking about him today, right? Who knows if Marc Antony and Cleopatra had won that battle, it would have been a completely different story, right? And I'd be telling you a completely different story today. And all my Caesar salad jokes would be out the window because one would be Marc Antony. But nonetheless, that's not how it happened. Augustus Caesar was successful at that battle and he ends up taking full power, okay? So now he is ruling Rome alone, right? And he is going to become Rome's first emperor, in part because he's very, very beloved, okay? He's going to implement some reforms similar to the way that Julius Caesar implemented popular reforms. Augustus Caesar is going to do things like say, hey, if your family has 3 children or more, you have to pay less in taxes, okay? He's going to be saving people money if they have children. Because what's he trying to do? Well, he's trying to raise the birth rate, right? He's trying to make Rome more populated so he has more people that he rules, right? He's also going to say, if you don't have 3 children, that's fine, but you're going to pay more in taxes, okay? He's going to make the penalties, like the punishments, really harsh if you cheat on your husband or wife or do things that weaken marriage, okay? Because he is really interested in protecting traditional Roman values, okay? So one thing that we need to look at before we wrap up with Augustus Caesar is the size of Rome's empire, okay? There is a lot of territory here that Rome was in charge of, right? At the time of Julius Caesar's death, at the time that Augustus Caesar, who was the first emperor of Rome, at the time that he came to power, it's a big area, okay? It's lots of different people with lots of different cultures. You remember studying ancient Greece. You remember the Peloponnesian Wars, right? You guys remember when Sparta down here went to war against Athens and it was a whole mess. And part of why that happened was because Sparta and Athens had completely separate cultures from one another, right? Rome is going to have a similar problem because they have conquered so many different groups of people with so many different ideas of what it means to be a good person, okay? Here's the thing about Augustus Caesar. Those reforms he was putting into place, like having the same ideas about what we should do, we should get married and have lots of children. It's giving people a homogeneous, that means the same all the way through, Roman identity. Okay, and so people all over what they would have thought of as the world felt like they had something in common. And this is going to make Augustus Caesar responsible for something called the Pax Romana. Okay, Pax, P-A-X Romana, right? And that is Latin, And it really just means the peace of Rome, okay? Or Roman peace. This is a time when miraculously, it's crazy because there are so many people in Rome and they had so many reasons to not like each other or not understand each other. They are going to not be fighting with each other, actually. And it's going to mean that Rome is saving a lot of money because its economy isn't being stretched to fund wars of Romans fighting Romans, right? And so Augustus Caesar is going to go down in history as one of the most popular Roman emperors of all time, okay? He actually is not even going to want to call himself emperor. He's going to adopt the title princeps, which means first citizen, okay? Because he says, hey, I'm on the same level as everybody else, even as he was becoming increasingly powerful, which is a pretty smart political move, if you ask me. So that's Augustus Caesar, okay? And I have to acknowledge there is so much, you guys, that we could talk about for each of these men. I really have just skimmed the surface, okay? But I wanted to give you at least a little bit of a taste and an introduction before your 7th grade teacher comes in and really is able to dive deep with you all next year, okay? So let's look at your activities for this together, right? You have 2 pages that you get to do, okay, if you choose to. The first is that categorizing activity, okay? And so it's just really a pretty quick check for you. You are going to, on this line, write down or type in, is this little fact describing Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, both or neither, okay? And I called it a tossed Caesar activity for all you salad fans out there. Which one was murdered on March 15th? Well, if you were as upset about that picture I showed you as I am, you remember that was the first guy, Julius Caesar, right? Which one ruled earlier? I don't want to tell you because I want you to do it on your own, right? But you get the idea of how you're going to do this. And if you do get confused, there is an answer key on the bottom of the last page of this packet, okay? Don't peek, but it is there, right? The second activity that I have for you to do is to create your own Caesar, okay? So there are 2 very interesting, I wrote them, articles in this week's packet, okay? You've got an article about Julius Caesar and an article about Augustus Caesar, okay? What I want you to do is to go ahead and read both and try to get an even deeper feel for what both men were like, right? Then you're going to come down here and you're going to pick one. Do you want this guy in a toga to be Julius Caesar for you, or do you want him to be Augustus Caesar for you? Also called Octavian, remember? In the speech bubble, you are going to choose to either write, well, actually, for the speech bubble, you have to write. Sorry, you can draw for all the others. But for the speech bubble, you're going to write a quote from the article you chose, right? For the thought bubble, you are going to describe or illustrate something that your Caesar believed in. Okay, so you remember, you're picking Julius Caesar or Augustus Caesar, something they believed in, right? If you choose Julius Caesar, you might choose to illustrate something related to his populare ideals, right? For Augustus Caesar, you might illustrate something connected to those traditional Roman values I mentioned, right? So that's the first thing you're going to do. There's one for the star, write or draw something they're best known for. I thought of those stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, right? And in the heart, something they cared about. And none of this is about Marc Antony, so you won't be drawing Cleopatra. And that's all you're doing. So I hope this is enjoyable for you. I'm really excited for you guys next week to get to learn a little bit more about Roman culture and art. Keep staying safe. I'm so glad that you're continuing to learn. Keep reading and remember that your teachers really love you. So that's all for today. Bye.